What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Today we have another interview with an atheist, a sort of a newish atheist here on YouTube and on Twitter. We're going to be talking with Mr. Bear today, which, I don't know, do you go by Mr. Bear or Mr. Bear Atheist?
Mr. Bear is fine.
We're going to be talking with Mr. Bear today, so if you're interested in hearing another, deconversion story or just a general story about another atheist and how they came out of the faith, then please stay tuned. All right, Mr. Bear, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, John. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I had a very full day today, so I feel pretty satisfied. But I'm wondering, what do you do on your YouTube channel here? And let everybody know where they can find you.
Sure, yes, you can find me on YouTube. I do response videos to other videos I find on YouTube. At the moment, they're pretty much about Christian attitudes about praying the gay away and responses to people like Alan Parr, street preacher Joe from the Cleveland Street Preachers. I think I came across his videos, and look, I really had to make something that initially I can laugh at, but also point out the fallibilities in these sorts of people. So yes, I'm fairly new to YouTube at the moment, so we'll see how we go along.
Oh, okay. Now, not to toot my own horn, but have you seen any of my Street Preacher Joe videos?
Actually, I have, yes. And look, with the YouTube community in the 21st century, you are one of the figures that helped me actually be brave enough to start these sort of videos. So I do owe you a debt of gratitude for that.
Oh, that is so awesome! I always figure that whenever I inspire somebody to start making videos or whatnot, it's always kind of like, you know what? If this dumbass can do it, I can too, kind of thing.
No, look, and that's the thing. Look, it's always good for a laugh to watch your videos as well, and I think that's the important part of this is that you need to laugh at this, because if you look at Islam and so on, there's just this incredible power that you can't laugh at this stuff because it's taken so seriously. But I think your videos help with that, and it's always good for a laugh and also very educational.
Yeah, honestly, as far as Islam goes and the other fantastical claims that religion makes, I don't see how you cannot read about a human-faced flying horse reaching Mecca in what was it, overnight or something like that. I don't know how you can imagine that happening and not laugh about it.
For me, it's more, I have a bit of an arts background. So for me, it's more that you can't draw Muhammad.
Yeah, no, that is also very funny.
Why not?
Oh, it's
Why
so
not?
offensive.
You can draw. Anyone can draw. Why can't you draw it? No, you'll be killed. Okay, so I tweeted about that yesterday. Actually, I thought this is reason 856 why I left religion. You can't draw Muhammad.
Oh, well, we'll get into that a little bit more on down in the interview, but I want to start out with asking about what your background is with religion in general. Where did you start out with in religion? Were you born into believing in a certain religion, or how did that happen for you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, look, I was raised in a coastal town in New South Wales in Australia, and with a Roman Catholic. My mother's Roman Catholic. My grandparents were from Italy, southern Italy, so very, very entrenched with Roman Catholicism. My father was Catholic as well. Look, my parents split when I was 8, but my stepfather was a great guy. He still is a great guy, more like my father, and he's not very religious at all. So I went to Catholic school, went to Mass every Friday, listened to my priest, who had no microphone, scream at us for half an hour or so until we got through it. And through my stepfather, I sort of saw these dogmas and rituals in the church through his eyes, which was, because he came along with us to church. We weren't consistent churchgoers, but then when we did go to church, it was this thing where I saw it through his eyes, and so he would question the sign of the cross and the up and down and the kneeling and the so forth, and he'd joke about it, and so I felt I was able to joke about it as well a little bit. So it's not like now I don't go to church. I still do. My kids went through a Catholic school, and it wasn't as if I had a really strict upbringing with religion either. But when you get to the age when you start questioning things, my mum would say, "Look, you have to believe in something," and that was the end of the conversation. And so it wasn't a really hard upbringing, let me put it that way. But when I started questioning things, that's when I realized people really held something to heart that was really hard to. And with a big Italian family, we'd get together, there'd be 30 of us having a big celebration, a communion or a confirmation or something religious that was really important to them. And to me, it really wasn't, because I realized how, I suppose I started questioning when I was about 10, 11 years old. Started questioning things like the usual things, the Ark. What was the big thing that stood out for me? The pale blue dot photo from Voyager 1. I don't know. I'm sure you've seen this from 1990. It's a photo taken from 6 billion kilometres away from Voyager 1, and it's this speck that's in a shaft of light, and that's the Earth. And I realised, wow, we're worrying about so many little things, and all we are is this dot that you can hardly see. And that sort of blew my mind. I went to Canberra and saw that at a place called Questacon, and they showed this pale blue dot photo, and that really was probably a turning point for me, realising that how insignificant things are unless we make them significant in our lives without God. So, yeah. I suppose that's the background to it.
Okay, so would you say up until that point religion was very important in your life?
Absolutely. I mean, I would always talk to God, and I mean, I remember receiving the Holy Spirit when I was 12. I was absolutely convinced I received the Holy Spirit. I felt warmth in my chest. I felt loved, needed. I was in a group that were there for me, for us, for all us kids receiving the Holy Spirit. I prayed. I received the Holy Spirit. I felt this warm, tingling sensation. I floated out of my body. It was incredibly powerful. And then I went to my first U2 concert in the early 90s, and everyone was singing With or Without You, 85,000 people. And I received the Holy Spirit again. It was that same feeling, warmth in my chest. I floated out of my body. We were all one. And I realized, well, what's this sensation if it's not the Holy Spirit? Because we weren't in church. And so I learned about collective effervescence and that feeling of all of us wanting to be together. And so this was another step when that was when I was 18, and I realized it may not be the Holy Spirit. It may be this other thing that's just purely human. So, Sorry, what were we asking? Sorry, we're going back to your question. I went off on a bit of a tangent there.
No, you're completely fine. I didn't know how attached you were to religion, because I know when I was growing up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, look, it was with me practically every day. I would talk to God every day. I would pray at night before bed. I would. It would be a part of me just about every day. I didn't consider myself absolutely religious, but I always felt bad when other people talked down about God.
Did you encounter that a lot, growing up? Because that's very weird, coming from my area of the world, because nobody talks down about God or anything like that in this area. So it's just it's kind of odd to hear that. Did that happen a lot?
Probably more in high school. I went to a public school in high school, and it was a great mix of people, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus. Australia is very multicultural, so we always had a very multicultural upbringing. I had Aboriginal friends. I knew a Hindu. I knew a Muslim when I was growing up, a young boy, and so I saw religion through their eyes as well. So then when they would say, and a good friend of mine came from Kent, England. and he was an atheist, actually, more agnostic, I suppose you would say. But he would challenge things, like he would joke to me about God. So when he'd when we'd have religious class and talk about something come up about evolution, say, he would whisper something to me like, oh, gee, what's an example? I don't know. I mean, the one that comes to mind is the Ray Comfort banana analogy, but something like that. Like green. Christopher Hitchens put it well. Like, God made the grass green to please our eyes, and so my friend would nudge me with an elbow and say, "Lucky God made it that color," and I'd say, well, didn't God make it that color? And he's like, well, I don't know, did he? So it was like this challenge of he'd come from this, he'd rib me, so to speak. He'd always elbow me and say, lucky God did it that way, right? And I'd sort of say, well, didn't he? And so I'd start to question things, and he'd question things, and I think that's where it comes from. This in Australia, there's a very underlying sort of making fun of each other. We always have a go at each other, so to speak, and challenge our beliefs in a very laid-back way. We're lucky in this country that there's no real extremist attitudes. We're a little more laid back, but there is an underlying Christian. It's like a quiet majority here. Christians are a very quiet majority in Australia. Things will pass through our parliament and government on the backing of Christians and money, and so we just sort of accept that and say, oh, that's fine. But they're talking about very dangerous things. We had the same-sex marriage vote. When was that? 2017, which came through, but that had to be a plebiscite of the people. We had to vote for it. The government were too weak to make that decision on their own, so we had to have a plebiscite for those sorts of things. But yeah, religion was a very strong part of my life until people were questioning me. My friends in high school were questioning me. A Hindu friend would question it. My Muslim friend would question it. What's Allah? What's God? Aren't they the same? They're called God. So, you know what I mean? Well, what's the difference? And he'd say, well, we pray to the same being, so what's the difference? And I'd say, well, are they the same? I don't know. I don't know what the Quran is. I haven't read it. And so all those sorts of things would come into being.
Yeah, it always amazes me how most religious people have only investigated their own faith. And even then, they haven't really investigated their own faith, because like now, me as an atheist, I've learned so much more about the Bible than I ever knew about the Bible as a Christian. And I'm wondering, do you find yourself in that position now? Like, do you think that you already knew a lot about what was in the Bible, or were some things illuminated after you left?
Not at all. I did not know as much about the Bible until I read the Bible, and this is a lot of the deconversion part of it. I mean, I went to Mass every Friday and they never read anything from Deuteronomy or Leviticus or Exodus or anything. They just read, everything was New Testament every single Friday. And so that's what I assumed the Bible was all about. It was all really nice parables about Jesus sharing the food and so on. I was very ignorant that way until a number of years ago when I actually sat down and read the Bible and went, wow, okay, there's a lot of death here. There's a lot of death, and for what reason? And, I researched, and Christians, and then I realized how much Christians defend God's decisions. Well, he's punishing them. And it's like, well, I read this part with God killing David and Bathsheba's baby because David cheated. So God said, well, I'm going to make your baby sick, and the baby dies. Punishing the baby for David's misdemeanors. It's like, no, but that's fine. That's God's. You don't question God's judgment.
Well, actually, if I can offer a little bit of correction there, the sin of David wasn't that he stepped out on his wife, because by that point David had about 6 wives or so. Like he had a lot of wives at that point. And the reason why God was very displeased with him was because he slept with another man's wife and then sent that guy to be killed. Basically, he was basically deceiving like an underling or whatnot, or somebody that was working for him, and so God was very displeased with that action. It's not actually the fact that David cheated on his wife. It's the fact that
I see.
he slept with a woman, got her pregnant, and then tried to get the guy, the husband of the woman, to think that it was his. And when that plan failed, he sent him to the battlefront to be killed. And so that was the reason why God like punished him.
See, isn't it interesting? Because that part stood out for me when I read that. I think I glossed over the rest of it because it perhaps was a bit too stupid. I, I thought, yeah, it's those things that you realize. No, thanks for the clarification. That makes so much more sense God's more justified that way.
Now, and you know what's more fucked up is that God tells David, "I'm going to have somebody close to you sleep with all of your women," basically. And so like a little bit later in the story, David is chased out of Jerusalem, I believe it was. And
yeah, something like that. Yes.
He was chased out. He had to live in the caves, but he left behind 10 of his concubines. And one of David's sons actually came through and fucked all of them in a tent just open to the public, just out in the open, and like, on a roof. Sorry, in a tent on a roof, just out in public for everybody. And so it was a way that God humiliated David. And so like God really should have been like, "Hey, I'm gonna have your son fuck your concubines." And it's like, well, God damn, I'm gonna kill my son and have my other son fuck my whores. Damn it.
Wow. Yeah, look, that's amazing, isn't it? I mean, when you said on the rooftop, I pictured the Beatles' last concert. Maybe that's what they should have adapted. I don't know. They should have done that as a farewell concert. Just all our groupies. Yeah. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, so sorry, we do that Bible podcast, and we kind of, I think it was just recently that we actually covered that part in it, so it's kind of fresh on my mind, and so everybody thinks that it's because David stepped out on his wife, but at that point he had multiple wives, and so him taking another wife really isn't a big deal to God. God didn't care. It was the fact that he had one of his soldiers killed, because of the affair. Basically.
I see. Okay. No, that's fine. I'm starting to believe in God again.
Yeah, exactly. That should make you believe in God.
That's done it for me.
Yeah. Sorry. So we got off on a tangent. We were talking about you and your connection to religion. I'm wondering, like, did you take part in a lot of like church activities or any kind of like youth activities, like as you were in middle school? Well, I don't know if you guys have middle school there, but just in school in general.
Look, not really. No, the closest I came was singing in a choir for the church, and even that was very limited. I only did that for a number of months, and no, I mean we weren't really exposed to anything like that. No, I was lucky that way. Like I say, we didn't really have a strict upbringing. I didn't have to do anything for the church. I didn't have to be an altar boy. I wasn't pressured into anything like that. So, no, not really. It was more. I was at a bit of a distance from the church. I mean, primary school was very. I realised I was very indoctrinated. It was a lot of religious studies. I mean, when you look at the syllabus at my primary school, it was probably 30. It was probably 45% was religious studies, and then the rest was English, math, science, whatever. So it was very much based in religion. I suppose I helped I helped when they built a new church. I helped carry the pews into the church. They got all the kids to carry the new pews into the church to save money. But I suppose it was part of my humbling, indoctrination into the church to, the humble man works. I don't know what you could. They probably aligned it to some verse in the Bible at random, but yeah. So that was part of my. I was involved in the church that way when they built the new church, and we went in and we were all excited and we got confirmed in there, but. When I went to high school, so I changed from a religious primary school to a public school in high school. We moved house, and so I left a lot of my friends behind, and I met a lot of new friends in I suppose you'd call it, what are the first couple of years that you call that in high school in the States? I suppose that's elementary school, is it? Or no, elementary is your primary, isn't it? When you're young,
Yeah,
up
well,
until when you start high school is.
yeah, so we have elementary school, which is first grade through like fifth grade, and then we have middle school, which is like sixth through eighth, and then we have high school, which is ninth through 12th.
I see. Yep. Okay. Yep. So that changeover when you're around 13, it's your elementary. I think that's when I met all my new friends, and basically, and from all sorts of backgrounds, and I suppose it opened up my eyes to all those other religions. Whereas otherwise, I was very much I was very insular in terms of being completely surrounded by Catholics in my younger years, and so that was a jumping off point, which started a 30-year deconversion to out of that whole Catholic indoctrination part of things. Yeah.
Oh wow! So your deconversion started when you switched from private Catholic school to public school.
If I was to pinpoint a time, yeah, it would have been around that time. And then it took a lot of years. I mean, I always had my nose in a book. I was a very avid reader. I used to hang out at the library. I was a bit of a nerd. And I would always look at, I suppose, space exploration books and things like that, and art books, space exploration, philosophy, plays, all sorts of things. And then I'd come across this Celestine prophecy book, which they had placed alongside a factual space exploration book, which was really, and I thought, well, this is just another sort of, I had no idea when I read it, I had no idea why they placed it in the space exploration section, but there it was. I suppose I thought Celestine was space. I don't know. It was very bizarre. So I read the Celestine prophecy when I was about 14. And then, and again, that made me realize, well, this is just a guy writing about these new agey ideas. And again, another step away from what I'd believed earlier. But yeah, it's been about a 35-year progression. Traveling helped me as well. I used to travel. If I was traveling overseas and I was scared, I would say, oh God, please keep me safe. Or I'd get on the plane and pray and say, please God, keep me safe, or whatever. And then make deals with God as I was traveling. And then, God, if you do this for me, I would truly believe you. I don't know why I would say something like that, because I already believed. But yeah, it was this weird sort of conversations I'd have with myself where I'd say, if you do this for me, I promise I will devote my life to you, or something like that. It was just this bizarre, what would you say? Dealing with God. I don't know. It was a very strange way to live. And then I met a lot of people traveling. I went through Europe and backpacked through Europe, and I went through the States when I was 21, and met a lot of the Bible Belt and their views, and that was scary.
It is very scary here.
It's very vocal. I remember meeting, I was in Las Vegas. I was waiting for the shuttle bus back to the airport, and there was a middle-aged African-American couple there on their second honeymoon. And I turned around and said, hi, how you going? How are you? And they said, oh, are you talking to us? And I said, yeah, of course. Yeah. Hi. Are you here on vacation, on holiday? And they said, oh yeah, it's our second honeymoon. And eventually we got talking. I said I was from Australia. They said, oh, we'd love to go there one day. And before I got off the bus, they turned to me and said, look, we're really sorry that we appeared shocked when you turned around and said hello to us. And I said, why is that? And they said, well, white people don't talk to us. It probably was their paradigm and how they saw the world, but they were very taken back when I turned around and said hello. And that really stuck with me. I was 21 at the time, and just thought, wow, to live in a country where they're so afraid of that sort of thing. I mean, that's more of a racial thing, not so much a religious thing, but that does transfer into religious paradigms and views as well, in terms of LGBTQ people being afraid to talk to people, and it was a very bizarre experiences. I had very bizarre experiences in the States. I loved it. love New York, I love LA, I love going through the middle part. But yeah, there were some very vocal people, and it really opened my eyes.
Yeah, I would hope that it would open up your eyes. But I guess continuing with that, at what point did you find yourself like really questioning your faith, like whether or not you believed in a God or whatever?
I think because of, evolution, learning about evolution, it, it's it was kind of a reverse thing for me. It wasn't so much that I read the uh, appropriate literature like evolution, and I actually started reading the people who were debunking it, and I went backwards from there. So when I a friend of mine, his son is a creationist, so this young man has become a creationist in his 20s, and so when he was saying things to me, this was 5 years ago, he would talk about the dinosaur bones and how they're not aged correctly and all these sorts of things, and I'd go, well, I don't even know how they age dinosaur bones, so let me find out. So when I found out about what they call the radiation testing and so on, and how they measure the strata and all those sorts of things. That's when I learned, well, hang on, he's talking out of his ass, basically, because he's not. And then because he was saying, God put the bones there. It's that old idea of what the creationists say. God put the bones there. It's the idea he latched onto. God put the bones there to test us. They're only 6,000 years old. Okay, so I found out for myself. So I came at it backwards. I didn't really put my nose into the origin of the species or scientific journals. I would sort of hear something and question it and say, well, let me find out for myself. And then when I found out for myself, I'd go, well, no, seems to be the truth, because this is peer-reviewed scientific information. It's accepted by a lot of people. It's been tested. It's been, et cetera, the scientific method. And so that led me to question things like the Bible, belief, how religion is structured, especially with the Catholic Church, in terms of how much money they're getting and things behind that. So I suppose I came at it backwards. When I would hear the Catholic Church would be exposed for something, I would look into the reasons why. It's a very laid thing. I understand that people are fallible, and that doesn't mean a diversion from God. But it's more of what they're saying and how they hold things true to their heart. And their beliefs. It's a very hard thing to describe about how I stepped away. I suppose it was based on facts ultimately and statements of truth.
Well, I'm kind of curious, like how evolution like actually played a role into that, other than finding out that these apologists are speaking out of their asses. I'm wondering what connected evolution to God.
The whole idea that this was made, everything was made perfect, I suppose, was one of the starting points for me, where people said, you know what, the earth has been made perfect. It's if you move one thing out of line by a tiny amount, everything will go out. Yeah, I think it was that thing where people would say something and the earth was made perfectly. And so when I looked into the history of the earth and researched and looked at that as well, I realized that the earth was nothing like it was today, in terms of the oxygen levels, the heat, and so on. And then that springs another idea of, well, how was the Earth formed? How was the solar system formed? How was the galaxy formed? Et cetera, et cetera. And then that leads you to seeing an image of 400 billion galaxies taken by the Hubble, and you go, okay, well, that's an awful lot of waste of space for one perfect planet. And so that leads you to think, well, I suppose deconversion requires a little bit of ego, in terms of, well, I'm a lowly human being. Would I do all that just to send my son to this microscopic dot at a certain point in time? And you sort of start to, it's almost like an egocentric thing, but I don't know if I'd even call it an egocentric thing. It's just putting myself in the place of God. And you say, well, if I have all the powers that ever were and ever will be, well, why don't I just put my name in flames across the sky and just end the whole debate? You'd have the best fireworks display in the history of the world, and just go, there you are. I'm here. End of story. Why not? Why wouldn't you do that? It'd be so much fun. Here you have Thanos turning people into cubes and things in Infinity War, and we're talking about an all-powerful God. You know what I mean? It's that thing where, why don't you? Why is it just no? We have to give him our love, and that's all there is to it. It just doesn't seem right to me.
And I mean, is it really a choice though? Because if you read the Old Testament, the choice that's given is hey, you can follow what I say, or I'm gonna fuck you up. It's your choice. I mean, is it really a choice to be hey, you're gonna do this thing, or I'm gonna fucking end you? It's that's not really giving somebody a choice. It's but they made the choice to get shot at. It's that's not exactly a choice.
Right. The whole free will argument. Well, this is what I love about the tree of knowledge. It's well, look, here's the tree of knowledge. I put it there. And then it's well, the omniscient question comes into it. Okay, Adam and Eve, here's the tree of knowledge. I made it. I know you're going to eat from it, but don't eat from it. But I know you will, but don't. Okay, but I know you will. It's just this manipulative, weird way of operating, and I suppose I attributed that aspect of God's behaviour, that passive aggressive, manipulative aspect of his behaviour that you clearly see in Genesis. Don't eat from the tree, but I know you will. I suppose I attributed that to Catholicism in terms of the Italians are very they're very passive aggressive, very guilt ridden, and they can be, not generally, I'm not saying all, but they can be that way where there's a bit of guilt underlying your decisions. Oh, you don't want to come to church? Well, I don't know. That's not the best. Is that really the best? Is that what God wants? You really don't want to come to church? It's Christians do that as well. And I think I attributed that to God and said, that's not the best way to do things, really. To like you say, no, you've got a choice, but you don't. Okay, and then it's that threat of violence, that threat of, you know what, I could wipe you out. I won't. Love me, but I could wipe you out anytime. And to me, that's where I realized this isn't a loving God. That's all I heard. God loves you. And then when you read the Bible, you go, no, God manipulates you.
Oh, yeah, he totally does. And I'm actually kind of surprised more Christian churches and Catholics and everything like that don't use the Old Testament more, because one of the main themes of the Old Testament is obey God. If you don't, bad shit will happen to you. And not just right. You, but your entire family, village, country. That's what the message of the Old Testament is.
Yeah, we're talking thousands could get wiped out here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly right. And well, that's the reason why the Old Testament isn't taught, right?
Oh, because he's a wrathful and vengeful God? Yeah.
And
they love the peaceful one.
You can't make those stories sound nice in a nice environment, in a nice warm church. Take your rebellious son to the gates and have the villagers stone him to death. Okay, that's our story for today. Go in peace. You can't make that sound nice. It's
why were they going to stone him? Oh, he was a mouthy little fuck. It's
that's right.
That's why we're killing him.
That's okay. Yes, please grab a rock. Yes. You just can't make that sound nice. And I only recently and even things like I won't go through them all, but there was that one about the stallions, and she's imagining about they had missions like stallions and things like this. She was that the lady who's she's imagining all her lovers and things. Why don't they read that one in church? That would be great.
I know, right? I never heard of that one until I become an atheist. It's
exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, it's oh, wait, they had emissions what? Holy fuck. That sounds like it should be on Pornhub or something.
Can you imagine the guys coming to church in trench coats?
We're just here to learn about the horse emissions. Yeah. Don't mind us in the back.
Yes. Guys at the back. Yes. I've been coming every Sunday. We got it this week. Yes. It's just things like that when you actually sit down and you read. I find Google Scholar fantastic. Google Scholar is just great in terms of, this has been a big part of my deconversion as well, in terms of reading what theologians say and translators say. And I'm not saying they're absolute experts, but they're probably more familiar with it than, say, some preacher on YouTube with 5 likes. I think I'll put more. I'm not going to. I almost said I'll put more faith. I almost said that. I'm not going to put more faith in them. I'm going to actually listen to what they say and take their ideas on board in terms of translation. This is the thing. If it's so clear, you always hear the Bible is the Word, but the Word has 12 different translations. Depending on the day and how you feel and who you are and where you're from and what you know.
Right.
To me, that's not perfect.
Now, you would think that God would be able to, transmit his message in a way that could be perfectly understandable, like across generations and time. If he's supposed to be this transcendent being, you would think that he would be able to get that message across with no confusion whatsoever.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was trying to find a mention of an iPod in the Bible, and that's not there either. So, what's the Hebrew for iPod? Wouldn't that be great if it was? And then, hey, I would start going the other way. But no. And my wife and I had a great discussion just the other week. We thought, if God had wanted that, if God had wanted us to know, it would just be there. It would be like another sense. That was one of the ideas we put forward. We just know. We would just know. And I know that religious people say that. Oh yes, I know. But it would be absolutely confirmed. It would be as if there would be a person next to you, and you'd know that figure was God.
Right.
And everyone saw it, and everyone would agree. Yeah, this thing next to me, we know it's God, right? Right. And that would make more sense, right?
Right.
In a way, it's like it would be a part of us.
I agree.
I don't know if that's clear or not, but it would be inherent.
Yeah.
But more inherent than a believer, if you know what I mean, like choosing to believe.
Well, I know Matt Dillahunty, whenever he is asked, what would prove it to you that God exists? And his response is usually, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, God would know exactly what it takes to prove to Matt that he is real. God would know what it would take. So it doesn't matter what Matt thinks about what it would take, but this God would know what it takes.
Yes, and you'd think so. Something that powerful would do that. That's right.
Well, considering that you really started questioning your faith and started falling out of the faith because of all these scientific facts that you were learning about that, you had never considered before, I'm wondering what was your reaction to when, I can't remember when it was, but the Pope, I believe, actually pardoned Galileo. It was somewhat recently. He pardoned Galileo for, basically persecuting him for saying that the Earth orbits around the sun instead of the sun orbiting around the Earth.
Well, the one I remember is from 2014 when the church accepted the Big Bang Theory. And I think the advisors were tapping the Pope on the shoulder saying, no, we can't really accept this. It goes against our business. So that's the one I remember. I don't remember the Galileo one, but I remember the Big Bang one. And the Pope said, the Big Bang most likely happened. Yes, look, we realize that now. But, God probably did it anyway.
Yeah, that's what they always say. That's like moving the goalposts or God of the gaps.
Absolutely.
that, they always push God into the, portion of knowledge that we just don't know. It's like, oh yeah, that's where God resides.
Yes, the never-ending tautology, as Hitchens phrased. That was a great quote from Hitchens. The never-ending tautology. As soon as discoveries are made, yes, we'll see. That proves God. On and on and on it goes, ad nauseum, forever. So yeah, exactly.
Now, one question that's been burning for me to ask, okay, is
Am I wearing pants? I'm wearing pants. Yep.
So evolution was a pretty big factor in your deconversion, at least at first. I'm wondering, how did 15-foot whale penises factor into that?
Well, not so much the thing. I'm learning how your brain works. I'm learning how your brain works.
No, okay. So I guess maybe I need to preface.
More the whale pelvic bone.
Oh yeah.
Like and the vestigial features of the whale,
right,
that shows that perhaps it walked around. It was more that. Yeah, I took a more sanitary approach.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to see my debate with Kent Hovind, but I brought up vestigial limbs, and he was like, "Oh no, those aren't vestigial. They needed to control the 15-foot whale penis." So, I mean,
I see.
Yeah. So sorry, I threw that in on you.
No, that's great. Okay. So, the hind limbs control the penis. Okay. Yeah. No, I don't see any connection there at all. But anyway, yeah. How bizarre.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, his argument was that the vestigial limbs of the whale are not actually vestigial limbs, that they are primarily used to control the big dick of the whale.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, look, and look, the whale is very impressive. But I don't know. I didn't.
That works on more than one level, if you get my meaning.
I'll have to watch that one now for sure. Kent, he's great.
Oh yeah, he ends up calling me a pervert. Well, no, he doesn't call me what he asks. Are you a pervert?
Oh, okay. Do you do missionary? That's perverted.
Only for whales, there, Kent.
That's right.
But anyways, to get back on a more serious note.
No.
So when you finally left, any faith at all, what was sort of the straw that broke the camel's?
I suppose I had just matured in myself, and I'd realised that I need to be who I am. It was that thing of living in. Whenever I. Prior, there was no one real moment, but I have traced it back to the end of last year, 2018, where I realised if I'm going to go forward from this point in time, and when I thought about God and questioned it, I realised I didn't feel bad in myself. There was always a wave of guilt in me when I questioned my religion. I always felt bad about it inside me. I suppose I realised there came a time when I was questioning it and didn't feel bad. And that's when I realised from this point on, this is who I am. It's gone. The veil has lifted. I see how it all is now. These are institutions set up for money, power, etc. I don't feel bad about questioning it anymore, because I think there was at that time I took up the sword and said, no, I'm really going to really question this now and be vocal. Up until that point, I wasn't. I would just argue with family, friends, and then end it on a nice note to keep the peace. And I realised at the end of last year I wasn't going to do that anymore. I wasn't going to disrespect anyone either, but I was going to probe and question and be vocal, because I realised how much it affected people, especially with the same-sex marriage vote. It really did affect people I know, and in how happy they were that they could marry their partners and just get on with their lives. And I suppose up until that time, I realised I'm who I am, but they are who they are, and this belief affects their lives. I don't like that. And I suppose I just made the decision to say, no, I just don't believe anymore, and go from there, I suppose, is a way of putting it.
So is that the reason why you didn't choose to go to a different version of Christianity? Like, I don't know, like how prevalent like Baptists or Methodists or Pentecostals are in Australia, but I'm sure that they have other denominations of Christianity over there.
Absolutely. I mean, there are about 5 different branches of Christianity in my neighbourhood here. We've got Anglican, we've got Baptist, we've got Church of New England, we've got and etc. No, when I realised it was all the same thing, based on how they chose to adapt that, I realised how it was all just, I suppose, an ideology that was based on something other than being good. It was an ideology based on cliques and groups and power and money and so on. And I realised that it was all on the same level. And so no, there was no way I was going to change. I mean, I dabbled in Buddhism when I was younger, Jainism. I have gone to some Buddhist talks because I do appreciate some of it. I appreciate understanding that we're all suffering, we're all anxious, we're all stressed. That's the human condition. I like that part of Buddhism, but I don't. But there's so much other elements of it, the reincarnation part of it, and so on, which dabbles in that supernatural element that really hasn't been shown to exist. It's really just that part of the imagination. I'm also a writer, so I understand that the imagination plays a really big part in terms of how we see things. Apophenia, we see things, we see shapes, we see, and how I learned how the human mind works. I realised that that's what people want in these institutions. They want to feel needed. They need something bigger than them. And that's okay, but when it leads to negative actions, no, sorry, I'm against that.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. For me, it was very much a light switch sort of moment when I decided, like, yes, I don't believe in a God anymore. Would you say, like, would that correctly, like, describe your experience, or no?
I think it was a very slow light switch, but yeah, there was, like I say, I trace it back to the end of last year where I realised I had to put that crap behind me and just get on to how I have been for many years, and that is just that I just don't believe anymore. It's just nothing points to it apart from philosophies, books, talking, ideas. That's all there is, really, as far as I can see. Look, I'm like anyone else. If something comes up, I'm open to it. I haven't closed my mind. I'm always reading. I'm always learning. I only learned about the Aquinas philosophies not long ago, about religion. I only came across that not very long ago. So I was talking from a place where I didn't really know I was talking from. I'm a little better now, but I'm always learning. Yeah, no, look, I'm just saying I'm always open to that. I'm always open to a good discussion. When I started questioning people on Twitter, it was incredible how I was trying to do it in a not smart ass way. I would say, so why do you think that? Tell me genuinely. I would actually write, tell me genuinely why you would think that way. And I'd get, oh, shut up, what do you know? And blah, 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 you're just an atheist. It's like, no, but I want to know. I do want to know. I'm curious. And then it was just a complete shutdown, no response for months. And then you get, so did you read about Aquinas, the philosophies? It's like, yeah, I've read them. They're ideas, they're philosophies, but it doesn't really point to anything. So that was part of it too. It was just this questioning, not getting any answers.
No, yeah, I'm right there with you. I found myself in the same position.
Yeah.
Now, what I want you to do now is sort of take a look back to like how you were, being a Catholic and everything like that, believing in God, like your personality, your demeanor. Is that terribly different from how you are now?
Oh, absolutely. I was far more judgmental when I was younger. I would make fun of people I have an older brother. I would make fun of people because of what they believed, what they thought, who they were. I was very judgmental because I felt I was right. So I was right because I believed what I believed. So if anyone was different to that, I judged them straight away. I may have been more meaner when I was younger towards others in terms of just outright dismissing their opinion. No, they were wrong. I'm far more accepting now, and far more. I feel I'm a far more better person. I donate far more easily. When you go to McDonald's now, you can round up your money and donate to charity. Have you got that over there? When you go to McDonald's and they say it's like an electronic board now where you can order in McDonald's and you can actually you can actually round up your money. I mean, it's just a small thing, but it's something I just do now. I round up to charities. I give more to charities. That's just one small example. I find myself being far more tolerant and far more of a listener than a talker.
Yeah, I was going to say that we have those, not at McDonald's or anything like that, but there are several places around here where you can round up and everything. And I generally do that. And anytime there's a chance where it's like, hey, spend $1 to help cure muscular dystrophy or something like that. And anytime anybody has like a fundraiser that they're doing for like, because I know Shannon Q, she recently did a fundraiser for MS. And
I saw that. Yes.
Yeah, and she made her goal, and she did really good in it. So I always try to support efforts like that.
Well, absolutely, yeah, and yeah, absolutely. Sorry, yeah.
No, I was gonna say last year actually, KC and I, we on one stream we said, hey, we're gonna donate any super chats or any money that we get from the stream, and we're gonna go buy peanut butter, and we're gonna donate it to Haitian kids, like Haitian orphans, through this charity that was running a peanut butter drive up here, right? And so we were able to collect over $1,000 here to buy peanut butter with, and we ended up buying over 800 pounds of peanut butter.
Oh wow, yeah, that's just amazing, and that's what I've realized as well. I've realized that as an individual, I can do so much. And I can do so much more now, realizing that, hey, we're all in the same situation and some need it more than others. I can help with that. Whereas before it was, no, my money's mine. I need to save. I need to look after me.
Did you give to the church? Like, I know some churches require like the 10% or whatnot, but I know when I was in Catholic, like it was never said you have to give, but they always passed around the donation plates and everything like that.
Yeah, they do that twice in a mass here. They pass the bags around twice per mass. And so even when my son was confirmed recently, they pass the bag around. My wife just digs out the change, and we get rid of the change, the shrapnel, and just they can have that. But no, I've never given to any churches really at all. No, it was really more of a spiritual thing with the church for me. It wasn't so much a money thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because, a lot of that money, it does go to help the local church, but it's just to, like, keep up, like, with, any maintenance or whatnot. But then a lot of it is sent to the actual Vatican, and a lot of that money is used to defend their pedophile rings.
Absolutely. I think I found out recently, one state, the state of Victoria, the churches in Victoria alone earned $87 million.
Yeah.
That's one state in Australia. We have 7 states, and so it's that's a big thing as well. Where I say no, I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, like, what about politically minded? Like, did you find yourself changing politically once you left the faith?
Oh, that's interesting. No, I've always been a slightly leftist socialist, I suppose you could say. When I do an online test of where I sit politically, I'm a little bit of a lefty socialist. I think I've always been that way. So not really, no. Our Prime Minister is an evangelical, and his name is Scott Morrison. and there was a fellow recently who was missing in North Korea. His name was Alec, a young man who was missing in North Korea. He was an Australian in North Korea, and he went missing. Our Prime Minister said, "I'll pray for him."
Like, no, we'd prefer you actually do some shit instead of sucking Jesus' dick, please.
That's exactly right. That's well put. You're the most powerful. You're the most powerful politician in our country. Go and get him, please. No, it took Sweden to intervene to get Alec back home. He only returned last week, and now the Prime Minister is, hey, the prayers worked.
Oh God, I always hate it when they do that. The fucks over here in the States, I mean, they will pray for like a hurricane to dissipate. The hurricane will destroy half of fucking Florida before it actually goes away, because that's how fucking hurricanes work. But lo and behold, you'll have the one crazy fuck out there that's like, I was praying all night for that hurricane to stop, and finally, after it destroyed half the state, it quit. Thank God.
That's right. And the one church that's standing, look at that. It's a sign.
Well, we're coming up on just about an hour into our discussion here. And I'm just kind of curious, what would you tell somebody, that is newly an atheist or maybe just questioning their religion? What's the best advice you can give somebody?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There are plenty of platitudes you could say, like, look, just believe in yourself, you're fine. I think they're a bit rubbish. I think you really just need to, yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's just keep learning, really. Just keep learning and just keep questioning. There is absolutely nothing wrong with questioning. And just learn for yourself. I mean, it's easy enough to say, look, go and read, but you need to understand what you're reading. And I think that's the challenge as well. Just trying to understand what you are reading, I think, is a big part of it. So try and read as much as you can. Just try and read everything. Even just read things that you're really not that interested in. It may lead to something else. It's just that thing of, oh, I didn't really know that. I'm going to read about that now and look into that. Whether it's cosmology or Carl Sagan or whoever, just look at those things and never really stop questioning, and just so that it's good in your own heart, so to speak. Make it so that you know, so that whenever someone comes around and says, oh, they took out all the Jews out of 9/11 so they weren't killed. It's like, well, find out for yourself if that's true. Don't just accept it. I think that's the best thing I can say. Don't just accept everything. Don't just say, oh, yeah, they know what they're talking about. Because the more you realize is that no one really knows what they're talking about. It's just that there are undeniable things that we can see in this reality that we need to agree on and say, yes, this is a piece of paper, this is that, this is whatever. So don't stop questioning, I suppose, is ultimately what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Independent verification of information, I think, should be a paramount in anybody's just daily life, because you'll end up having a lot of people that just believe whatever they're told. Even as atheists, they just believe whatever they're told, and hardly anybody bothers to actually fact check the real information. Instead, they just trust whatever third-hand information they get. That's why,
absolutely.
That's why in all of my videos I try to link like things in the description, and I'm like, look, don't trust me, go and look for these things yourselves. Here are the links that I use for this video, but I always try to make sure to push everybody to actually verify the information for themselves.
I do the same thing with my videos. I include all the links that I've read, and so you can always make up your own mind as well. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the big difference between religion and more of a free thought sort of mindset. And that's, that you have to not just take somebody's word for it or not just believe somebody at face value. They totally support independently figuring it out for yourself and making up your own.
Yeah, detaching the emotion from the intellect as well is very, very challenging. When you say, because you get that, like I said, I got that rise in my heart. I would start questioning and then feel this really weird sensation inside me. So it's that sensation of, oh, I feel bad about this. No, just separate the emotion. Just step away. Just park the emotion, and just switch on the brain, purely the brain, and just see what the words are saying, what these people are saying, and take that in. And then you can always switch on your emotion later. It's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it is. Well, Mr. Bear, I really appreciate you coming by here, spending some time on the channel, telling everybody your story. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you and, on YouTube or on Twitter?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on. You can find me at Mr. Bear Atheist on Twitter, and on there is my YouTube link. I don't have a customized YouTube link at the moment, but I suppose if you look up Mr. Bear on YouTube, you'll see my videos there. And on Twitter, I'm on there daily. So feel free to get in touch and have a chat and tell me genuinely why you believe what you believe.
Yeah, and his links are going to be down in the description if you're listening to this on my channel. And definitely go and check out Mr. Bear and his content. He's got some great content already up, and he's still working on more. So if you're looking for another good atheist content creator, then he's probably one of your guys. So thank you again, Mr. Bear, for being on the show today. Thank you, heathens, for stopping by. Any final thoughts that you have there, Mr. Bear?
Look, it's like I say. Look, I think our community is growing because of the ability to share so much information these days, and I think that's fantastic. And I think please don't be scared to share your ideas and your views as well. I try to do mine with a little bit of humour to make it a little bit funny. I'm working on a little trailer as part of my videos at the moment. It's a horror movie called The Bible. That's part of the trailer that's going to be in there. So if you want to check that out, please do. I'll have that up on the weekend. But look, always put your views out there, and don't be scared to do that.
Definitely. Don't be scared to have your views challenged or even have to support your views. I find that I am so much better prepared, so much more prepared whenever somebody questions my views and I have to defend them than when somebody doesn't. So it's always a very good thing. So thank you, Mr. Bear, for joining us today. You heathens, if you haven't yet, go down below, check out Mr. Bear's links, but also comment down below. And while you're down there, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice, and I will see you heathens later.